The distress call echoed through the void, a desperate plea carried on quantum waves that even the vast emptiness of space could not silence. Fleet Commander Torrin Reed stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship Redemption, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. The message played again, translated from the alien language into something humans could understand. To any who received this transmission, the Concordiat has fallen. The scourge has broken through our final defenses. Our world burns. Our children die. If anyone hears this, please help us. Torrin's jaw tightened. The Altari were peaceful beings, philosophers and artists who had welcomed humanity into the galactic community when Earth first ventured beyond its solar system. They had no significant military, believing cooperation would always prevail over conflict. That belief had made them easy prey. "Confirm signal authenticity," Torrin ordered, his voice steady despite the ice in his veins. Lieutenant Mira Ellis nodded, her fingers dancing across her console. "Confirmed, sir. Transmission originated from Altari Prime approximately 72 hours ago. Distance? 9 light-years from our position, sir. 9 light-years. Even at maximum FTL, they were looking at a 12-hour journey. 12 hours, during which the Scourge would continue their devastation, unchecked and uncontested." Admiral Petra Volkov materialized on the bridge, her holographic form flickering, slightly at the edges, a testament to the distance between her command vessel and the Redemption. "You received it too," she said. It wasn't a question. Torrin nodded. "The entire 7th Fleet is within range. We can mobilize immediately." Petra's expression hardened. "The Security Council has declined intervention. The Altari system falls outside our protection zone." "They're our allies," Torrin protested, anger flaring in his chest. "They're trading partners," Petra corrected, though her tone suggested she shared his sentiment. "The Council fears engaging the Scourge directly. They've determined the risk is too great." Torrin looked around the bridge, at the men and women who had followed him through countless battles. Each face reflected the same conflict he felt: duty to command versus moral obligation. The Altari had always been there for humanity, offering knowledge and friendship when other species had regarded the newcomers with suspicion or outright hostility. "The Scourge won't stop with the Altari," Torrin said quietly. "We've seen their pattern. They consume a world, absorb its technology, and move to the next. They're getting closer to human space with each conquest." Petra's hologram flickered again, as she sighed. "I know, Torrin. But my hands are tied." Torrin straightened his back, decision made. "Then perhaps it's time to untie them." He cut the communication and turned to his communications officer. "Send this to all ships in the 7th Fleet. Prepare for immediate departure. Combat Protocol Echo 7. Mission Classification Redemption." Lieutenant Ellis looked up, eyes wide. "Sir, Echo 7 is a defensive protocol. Without Council authorization—" "I'm authorizing it," Torrin interrupted. "The Altari are under attack. That makes this defensive." His executive officer, Commander Davis, stepped closer. "Sir, this constitutes a direct violation of orders. The consequences will be mine to bear," Torrin finished. "Any officer unwilling to follow this course may transfer command and remain behind. No penalties, no questions." The bridge fell silent. No one moved. Davis finally nodded. "The 7th Fleet awaits your orders, Commander." Torrin turned to the navigation station. "Plot course for Altari Prime, maximum speed." As the massive engines of the Redemption surged to life, Torrin received confirmation signals from 23 other vessels. The entire fleet, not a single ship, had opted out. The stars outside began to stretch into lines as the fleet prepared to jump. Humanity's most feared war machines were on the move, undertaking an unsanctioned rescue mission that could trigger a galactic incident. Or perhaps, Torrin thought, it would remind the galaxy why humanity had risen so quickly among the stars. Why, despite their short time on the cosmic stage, other species had learned to tread carefully around the newcomers. The Scourge was about to learn that lesson too. The Redemption shuddered as it tore through the fabric of space. In the Strategic Command Center, holograms danced around Torrin as he assessed what little information they had on the enemy. The Scourge remained largely a mystery. a hive mind species that appeared from the galactic rim 5 years earlier, consuming everything in their path. What do we know about their tactics? Torin asked, studying the projected battle scenarios. Commander Davis gestured at the display. They overwhelm with numbers. Millions of drone ships, each relatively weak, but deployed in such quantity that conventional defenses are simply exhausted. Lieutenant Ellis added. Their advantage is coordinated action. Every drone acts as part of a perfect whole. No hesitation, no confusion. Torin nodded grimly. The Altari stood no chance against such an enemy. Neither did most species in known space. Only humanity, with its obsessive development of military technology, a legacy of its own violent history, possessed the firepower necessary to challenge the Scourge. What about their command structure? Torin asked. Intelligence suggests their fleet is controlled by larger vessels. Queens, essentially, Davis replied. Destroy them, and the drones become disorganized. Ellis looked up from her station. Sir, I've been analyzing the distress signal. There's something strange about it. Elaborate. The quantum signature is pure Altari, but the encryption method, it has human markers. Torin's eyes narrowed. That's impossible. We haven't shared military-grade encryption with any non-human species. Nevertheless, sir, someone did. And whoever encoded this message wanted us specifically to receive it. The revelation hung heavy in the air. If someone had deliberately used human encryption protocols, then either the Altari had a human ally on their world, or someone wanted to ensure humanity would respond to this crisis. Could it be a trap? Davis voiced the concern they all felt. Possibly, Torin admitted. But to what end? The Scourge has never shown any particular interest in humans before. The tactical officer, Lieutenant Reeves, spoke up. Sir, I've completed the weapons assessment. All ships report combat-ready status. The new Prometheus cannons are online. Torin nodded in satisfaction. The Prometheus system represented humanity's latest advancement in weaponry, a gravitational disruptor that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level. Untested in actual combat, but devastating in simulations. Status report on the infantry divisions, Torin ordered. Major Grant stepped forward. Marines are prepped and ready. Mech battalions fueled and armed. Combat dropships standing by. Good, because we're not just going to hit them from orbit. We're landing ground forces to evacuate Altari civilians. A murmur passed through the command center. Ground operations against the Scourge were considered suicide missions. Sir, Davis began cautiously, we don't have enough troops to secure an entire planet. We're not securing the planet, Commander. We're extracting as many Altari as we can and denying the Scourge their prize. Understanding dawned on Davis's face. Scorched earth. Precisely. If we can't save their world, we'll make damn sure the Scourge gains nothing from it. The comm system chirped, and Admiral Volkov's hologram appeared again. Her expression was stern, but there was a hint of something else. Pride, perhaps. I just received word of your departure, Commander Reed. The Security Council is furious. I expected as much, Admiral. They've ordered me to stop you by any means necessary. Torin met her gaze steadily. And will you, Admiral? A small smile touched Volkov's lips. I would, Commander, but it seems my entire battle group is experiencing a simultaneous navigation system malfunction. We'll be unable to pursue for at least 24 hours. Relief washed over Torin. Most unfortunate timing, Admiral. Indeed. You understand, Commander, that I cannot officially support this action. Of course not, Admiral. But unofficially, she paused, her holographic eyes burning with intensity. Make them remember why humanity is feared, Torin. Godspeed. As her image faded, Torin turned back to his crew. In 6 hours, they would reach Altari space. In 6 hours, they would either save a civilization or join it in extinction. All hands, he announced shipwide. Prepare for combat deployment. This will not be a simple battle. This will be a reckoning. The fleet emerged from FTL on the edge of the Altari system. Sensors immediately scanning for threats. The tactical display transformed into a hellscape of red indicators. Thousands upon thousands of Scourge vessels swarming around the once beautiful homeworld of the Altari. Mother of mercy, breathed Lieutenant Ellis, staring at the readings. There are over 20,000 enemy ships in orbit. Torin absorbed the information with grim resolve. The 7th Fleet, with its 24 warships, was outnumbered nearly 1,000 to 1. But numbers alone didn't tell the whole story. Each human vessel carried firepower equivalent to hundreds of the smaller Scourge drones. "Life signs on the planet?" he asked. The science officer worked frantically at his console. "Faint readings, sir. Concentrated in the southern hemisphere. Approximately 2 million Altari still alive, clustered in underground shelters. 2 million out of a population of billions." Torin pushed down the surge of anger that threatened to cloud his judgment. "Identify Scourge command vessels," he ordered. The tactical display shifted, highlighting 3 massive ships positioned in a triangular formation above Altari Prime's capital city. "There," Davis pointed. "They're queen ships, each one likely controlling thousands of drones." Torin studied the enemy formation. The Scourge operated with hive-like efficiency, but that also created a vulnerability. Cut off the head, and the body would falter. "New contact," Ellis called out suddenly. Small vessel approaching from the planet's surface. Sir, it's an Altari diplomatic shuttle." "Hail them," Torin ordered, surprised that anything could escape the Scourge blockade. The viewscreen flickered to life, revealing not an Altari but a human woman. Her dark hair was streaked with gray, her face lined with exhaustion and marked with burns. Behind her, an Altari lay wounded, their luminescent skin dulled with pain. "This is Dr. Eliza Moore, Terran Science Liaison to Altari Prime," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious injuries. "Thank God you came." "Dr. Moore," Torin acknowledged. "We received the distress call. What's your situation?" "Critical. The Scourge arrived without warning 5 days ago. They've been systematically destroying our cities and harvesting our technology." She glanced back at her Altari companion. "They're particularly interested in the quantum communication arrays. That's why I used human encryption. I hoped it would reach you directly." "So the encryption was your doing," Torin said. "You've put us in a difficult position, Doctor. I know. But the Altari have no defenses left, and what the Scourge is after. Commander, they can't be allowed to obtain the Altari's quantum technology. The implications would be catastrophic." Torin exchanged glances with Davis. The Altari were known to be centuries ahead of other species in quantum mechanics, but they shared their advancements freely. "What aren't you telling me, Doctor?" Dr. Moore's expression darkened. "The Altari developed a prototype quantum displacement drive, theoretical faster-than-light travel without the limitations of our current systems. Instantaneous transport across any distance." The implications hit Torin like a physical blow. With such technology, the Scourge could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. No preparation time, no defense possible. "Where is this prototype now?" "Hidden in a shielded facility beneath the capital. But the Scourge are getting closer. They're tearing the planet apart to find it. Rendezvous with the Redemption," Torin decided. "We'll extract you and your companion. Then you're going to tell us exactly how to reach that facility." As Dr. Moore's shuttle approached, Torin turned to his tactical officer. "Lieutenant Reeves, prepare a targeting solution for those queen ships. We're going to hit them simultaneously with everything we've got." "Sir," Reeves replied, "even with our combined firepower, we might only destroy one before the others react." "That's why we're deploying the Prometheus cannons," Torin said. 3 targeted strikes, 3 queen ships destroyed before they can coordinate a response. A hush fell over the bridge. The Prometheus system was humanity's most closely guarded weapon, its very existence classified at the highest levels. "Sir," Davis said quietly, "once we use that weapon, there's no going back. Every species in the galaxy will know what we're capable of." Torin's eyes remained fixed on the enemy armada surrounding the dying world. "They already know what we're capable of, Commander. That's why they keep their distance. Today, we're simply providing a reminder." He opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Commander Reed. In 5 minutes, we engage the enemy. Our primary targets are their command vessels. Fire on my mark, full barrage, Prometheus authorized." The channel filled with acknowledgments as the fleet moved into attack formation. 24 ships against thousands. Impossible odds by any rational assessment. But humanity had never been particularly concerned with odds. The human fleet accelerated toward Altari Prime in perfect formation, weapons charged and shields at maximum. For several long moments, the Scourge vessels continued their orbital patterns, seemingly oblivious to the approaching threat, or perhaps dismissing it as insignificant. "They're not reacting," Ellis noted, tension evident in her voice. "They will," Torrin said grimly. "Mark my words." As if on cue, the swarm shifted. Thousands of smaller craft peeled away from the main body, forming a defensive screen between the human fleet and the three Queen ships. "Targeting solutions locked," Lieutenant Reeves reported. "Prometheus cannons charged and ready." Torrin took a deep breath. Once they fired, there would be no possibility of retreat. The entirety of the Scourge Armada would descend upon them with singular purpose. "All ships, execute attack pattern Delta. Fire on my mark." He paused, watching as the fleet settled into position. 3, 2, 1. Mark. Space itself seemed to fold between the human vessels and their targets. The Prometheus, cannons discharged, not beams of energy or projectiles, but distortions in the fabric of reality that ripped across the void. Where they passed, matter simply ceased to exist, replaced by expanding spheres of gravitational chaos. Two of the Queen ships vanished instantly, their massive structures collapsing as fundamental forces tore them apart from within. The third, partially evaded, its bulk shuddering as one side disintegrated while emergency shields flared around the remainder. "Direct hits on targets Alpha and Bravo," Reeves called out. "Target Charlie is damaged but operational." Around them, the effect on the Scourge was immediate and dramatic. Nearly half the drone ships suddenly drifted aimlessly, their controlling intelligence erased from existence. The remainder, still in communication with the surviving Queen, began to regroup with frightening speed. "All vessels, conventional weapons free," Torrin ordered. "Focus fire on the damaged Queen ship." The human fleet unleashed its secondary arsenal, railguns, accelerating projectiles to relativistic speeds, plasma lances burning through hulls, missile swarms seeking out vulnerable points in the enemy formation. The space between the opposing forces became a hellscape of destruction. But the Scourge adapted quickly. The surviving drones formed protective clusters around their remaining Queen, sacrificing themselves by the hundreds to absorb incoming fire. Meanwhile, thousands more surged toward the human fleet, unconcerned with self-preservation. "Incoming!" Ellis shouted as the first wave of Scourge drones slammed into the Redemption's shields. The massive warship shuddered under the impact. "Shield integrity at 87%, reported the defensive systems officer. "They're using kamikaze tactics." Across the fleet, the scenario repeated itself. Human warships, technological marvels though they were, found themselves beset by enemies willing to destroy themselves to cause damage. "The Intrepid and Dauntless are reporting shield failures," Davis announced, monitoring fleet communications. "They're taking hull damage." Torrin watched as one of the smaller frigates, the Sentinel, disappeared in a blinding flash as its reactor containment failed under the relentless assault. 700 souls gone in an instant. "Pull the fleet into defensive formation," he ordered. "Concentrate fire on any drones approaching damaged vessels." But even as he gave the command, Torrin knew they were fighting a losing battle. For every drone they destroyed, 10 more took its place. The remaining Queen ship had retreated behind multiple layers of defenders, making a clear shot impossible. "Sir," Ellis called out, "Dr. Moore's shuttle has docked. She's requesting immediate access to the bridge." "Granted," Torrin replied, not taking his eyes off the tactical display. Another human vessel, the destroyer Vigilant, was now surrounded by a swarm of enemies, its distress calls becoming increasingly desperate. Dr. Moore arrived on the bridge. Moments later, her face ashen as she took in the battle raging around them. The wounded Altari followed, supported by a medical officer. "This is Ambassador Lyran," Dr. Moore introduced her companion. "He needs to speak with you urgently." The Altari's skin pulsed with weak bioluminescence as he struggled to stand upright. "Commander Reed," he said, his translated voice tinged with pain. "You cannot win this battle through conventional means." "We're discovering that," Torrin acknowledged grimly as another impact rocked the ship. "There is an alternative," Lyran continued. "The quantum displacement technology. It was not designed as a drive system. It was designed as a weapon." Silence Fell across the bridge. Explain, Torin demanded. The displacement field can be modified to create a cascading quantum disruption. If detonated at the heart of the Scourge fleet, it would destroy them all, Dr. Moore finished. But the facility containing the prototype is now deep behind enemy lines. Torin studied the tactical display. A frontal assault would be suicide. But perhaps there was another way. What about a small team, he suggested. A stealth insertion while we keep the Scourge occupied up here? Possible, Lyran conceded. The facility's defenses will recognize Altari biosignatures. Then you'll need to go with them, Torin said. Sir, Davis interjected. I volunteer to lead the ground team. Torin nodded. Assemble your best. Take one of the stealth dropships. We'll create a diversion to mask your descent. As Davis left to prepare, Torin turned back to the battle. The human fleet was now arrayed in a defensive sphere, fighting desperately against the endless waves of Scourge drones. They wouldn't last much longer. All ships, he commanded. Prepare for maximum offensive push toward the surviving queen. Ship, we need to keep their attention fixed firmly on us. He looked at Dr. Moore and Ambassador Lyran. If your weapon fails, Doctor, we won't get a second chance. It won't fail, she said with quiet certainty. But Commander, the quantum disruption will affect everything within the planetary orbit, including your fleet. Torin's expression didn't change as the implications sank in. Then we'd better make this count, he said softly. Commander Davis crouched in the cramped confines of the stealth dropship as it plummeted through Altari Prime's atmosphere. Around him, 12 of the 7th Fleet's most elite Marines checked, their equipment with practiced precision. The ship's stealth systems rendered it invisible to conventional detection, but the descent was still harrowing, particularly with the battle raging in orbit above them. 5 minutes to touchdown, the pilot announced, her voice steady despite the turbulence buffeting the small craft. Davis turned to Ambassador Lyran, who sat strapped into a reinforced seat, his bioluminescent skin flickering weakly. Once we land, you'll need to guide us to the facility. Can you manage? The Altari inclined his head. I was chief administrator of the Quantum Research Division. The facility was my responsibility. I can guide you. What kind of resistance should we expect on the surface? Asked Sergeant Torres, the Marine squad leader. Dr. Moore, who had insisted on joining the mission despite Torin's objections, pulled up a holographic map. The Scourge have concentrated their ground forces around major population centers and technology hubs. The research facility is located beneath what was once our central university complex here. She pointed to a location, several kilometers from the capital city's heart. The area is likely crawling with harvester units, she continued. They strip technology and biological material for integration into their collective. Harvesters? Davis questioned. Think of them as the Scourge's ground troops. 6-limbed, heavily armored. They communicate through subsonic frequencies and can coordinate perfectly, and they don't feel pain. The Marines exchanged glances. They'd trained for extraterrestrial combat scenarios, but few had actually engaged alien hostiles outside of simulations. Our primary advantage is speed, Davis stated. We get in, activate the weapon, and extract before they can organize a response. The Wine's dropship shuddered violently as it passed through a layer of debris, the remains of Altari orbital platforms and satellites, now a hazardous belt surrounding the planet. Approaching landing zone, the pilot reported. Visual confirmation of Scourge ground activity approximately 1 kilometer east of our position. Through the viewports, Davis could see the devastation. What had once been a gleaming metropolis of crystalline spires now lay in ruins. Massive Scourge harvesting machines moved through the destruction, extracting materials from buildings and infrastructure with mechanical efficiency. Find us a concealed approach, Davis ordered. The dropship settled into a small courtyard surrounded by partially collapsed structures. As the team disembarked, the true scale of the destruction became evident. Bodies of Altari civilians lay everywhere, many partially dissected by Scourge harvesting procedures. Ambassador Lyran made a keening sound of distress, his skin pulsing with grief. My people! We need to move, Torres urged, scanning their surroundings with practiced efficiency. Their patrols will detect us soon enough. Dr. Moore supported Lyran as the group moved through the ruins, following a route that skirted the heaviest concentration of Scourge activity. The sounds of harvesting machinery, grinding, cutting, processing, created a constant industrial backdrop to their advance. The facility entrance is beneath the central archives, Lyran explained as they approached a massive, partially collapsed, domed structure. It was designed to withstand orbital bombardment. Let's hope it lived up to its specifications, Davis muttered, eyeing the structural damage evident even from outside. The team worked their way through the building's ruined corridors, encountering no resistance until they reached the central chamber. There, they froze at the sight of 3 Scourge harvesters methodically dismantling a collection of Altari data crystals. Davis signaled the Marines, who positioned themselves with practiced precision. At his mark, they opened fire simultaneously. Concentrated plasma bursts striking vulnerable joint sections of the alien machines. 2 harvesters collapsed immediately. The third turned with unnatural speed, emitting a subsonic pulse that made the human's teeth vibrate painfully. Before it could advance, Torres launched an EMP grenade that detonated against its central processing unit. The harvester convulsed, then fell still. That pulse was a distress signal, Dr. Moore warned. We don't have much time. Lyran moved to what appeared to be a solid wall and pressed his palm against it. His bioluminescence flared briefly, and a section of the floor slid away, revealing a spiral staircase leading downward. The facility is self-contained, he explained as they descended. Separate power, air supply, shielding. It was designed to continue functioning even if the surface was rendered uninhabitable. Prescient, Davis commented grimly. The staircase led to a massive reinforced door that responded to Lyran's biosignature. Beyond lay a laboratory complex filled with equipment unlike anything the humans had seen before. Crystalline structures interlinked with flowing channels of what appeared to be liquid light. The quantum displacement array, Lyran said, moving toward the central console. It was originally conceived as a transportation system. The weaponization was an unfortunate necessity. He began activating systems, the equipment humming to life around them. Dr. Moore joined him, her expertise in quantum mechanics making her one of the few humans who could understand the principles involved. How long will this take? Davis asked, setting guards at the entrance. 15 minutes to bring the system fully online, Dr. Moore replied. Another 5 to modify the displacement field for maximum destructive potential. Davis checked his tactical display. Above them, the battle continued to rage. But the human fleet was taking heavy losses. 3 more ships had been destroyed, and the remainder were struggling to maintain formation against the relentless Scourge assault. We may not have 20 minutes, he said quietly. As if in confirmation of his concerns, a thunderous impact shook the facility. Dust drifted from the ceiling as alarm systems activated. They've found us, Torres reported from her position by the door, multiple harvester signatures converging on our location. Davis made a quick decision. Set up a defensive perimeter. Buy them as much time as you can. He turned to Dr. Moore and Lyran. Work faster. As the Marines deployed around the entrance, establishing firing positions and laying proximity mines, Davis contacted the Redemption. Commander Reed, this is Davis. We've reached the facility and are initiating weapon startup sequence. Estimated time to activation, 15 minutes. However, we have Scourge forces inbound to our position. Torrin's voice came back, distorted by interference. Understood, Commander. We'll create the biggest diversion we can manage. Just get that weapon online. Above them, the human fleet began a desperate maneuver, concentrating their remaining firepower in a suicidal charge directly at the surviving Queen ship. It was a move born of desperation, but it had the desired effect. Scourge forces redeployed to protect their command vessel, temporarily reducing pressure on the ground team. As Lyran and Dr. Moore worked frantically to bring the quantum weapon online, the first wave of harvesters reached the facility entrance. The Marines opened fire, their specialized weapons tearing through alien biomechanical shells. But for each harvester that fell, 3 more took its place. 10 minutes to activation, Dr. Moore called out, her hands moving across alien interfaces with increasing confidence. Davis looked at the dwindling ammunition supplies and the growing number of enemy signatures on his tactical display. He could only hope it would be enough. Commander Torrin Reed watched as the tactical display before him transformed into a chaotic storm of combat indicators. The Redemption, along with the remaining ships of the 7th Fleet, had abandoned all pretense of defensive positioning. Every vessel was now committed to a furious assault on the Scourge Queen ship, a desperate gambit to buy time for the ground. "Team, status report," Torin demanded, as another impact rocked the flagship. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 11, reported Lieutenant Ellis. "Automated system sealing affected sections. Weapons operating at 70% capacity." "And the fleet?" Ellis's expression was grim. "We've lost the Valiant and Defiance. The Indomitable has suffered critical reactor damage and is evacuating crew. Remaining vessels report similar conditions." Torin absorbed the news stoically. Nearly a third of his fleet gone, and the rest would follow soon enough. On the main view screen, he could see the Scourge Queen ship still surrounded by a protective swarm of drones, though their numbers had thinned considerably under the concentrated human assault. "Sir," Ellis continued, "Commander Davis reports they're under heavy attack. Estimates 7 minutes until the quantum weapon is online." 7 minutes. Torin studied the tactical situation. At their current rate of attrition, the fleet wouldn't last that long. The Scourge had adapted to their tactics, focusing their attacks on damaged vessels to maximize their effectiveness. "Open a secure channel to all remaining ships," Torin ordered. When the connection was established, he addressed his captains directly. "This is Commander Reed. Our ground team needs 7 more minutes. We need to create a diversion that will draw the maximum number of Scourge forces away from the planet." He paused. Knowing what he was about to propose would mean certain death for those who carried it out. "I'm calling for volunteers for a suicide run against the Queen ship. We need to penetrate their defensive screen and deliver a direct hit to their command center." The responses came without hesitation. Every captain volunteered immediately. "The Redemption will lead the assault," Torin decided. "Captain Harlow, your ship has the least damage. You'll hold back and recover as many escape pods as possible once the weapon activates." "Understood, sir," came the reluctant acknowledgement. Torin cut the communication and turned to his bridge crew. "This ship is about to attempt something that violates every principle of strategic combat. Anyone who wishes to evacuate may do so now. No judgment, no consequences." Not a single officer moved from their station. "Very well," Torin said, pride evident in his voice despite the circumstances. "Navigation. Plot an intercept course directly through the heaviest concentration of their defenses. Engineering. Divert all power from life support systems to engines and forward shields. We're going to punch straight through to that Queen ship." As the Redemption altered course, accelerating towards certain destruction, Torin opened a channel. "To the ground team. Commander Davis, this is Reed. We're creating your diversion. Make it count." On the planet's surface, Commander Davis had sealed himself inside the quantum facility. The last of the Marines had evacuated with Dr. Moore and Ambassador Lyron, leaving him alone to complete the mission. "Status report," he requested over the comm link as he barricaded the inner door. "Dropship away," came Torres's tense reply. "ETA to minimum safe distance, 6 minutes." Davis checked the quantum console. The weapon was nearly ready, its crystalline, components pulsing with energy that seemed to bend the light around them. 4 minutes until activation. 90 seconds for the cascade reaction. That would be cutting it close for the escaping dropship. A thunderous impact shook the facility as the Scourge harvesters renewed their assault on the outer doors. Their coordination had become erratic following the destruction of the 2nd Queen ship, but their numbers remained overwhelming. "Commander Reed," Davis called over the fleet channel. "Ground team evacuated, preparing final activation sequence. What's your status?" The response came through heavy static. "Queen ships neutralized. Fleet heavily damaged. Most vessels non-operational." "Understood," Davis replied, recognizing the unspoken reality. The 7th Fleet was finished. "Sir, it's been an honor." "The honor was mine, Commander." Torin's voice faded in and out. "Complete your mission." As the outer doors finally gave way under the relentless Scourge assault, Davis activated the final sequence. The quantum displacement array hummed to life, energy, building within its crystalline matrix. "Cascade initiated," he reported calmly. "Detonation in 90 seconds. He drew his sidearm and positioned himself before the inner door. If the Scourge reached the controls before detonation, all would be lost. He didn't intend to let that happen. The harvesters breached the second barrier, pouring into the corridor outside the main laboratory. Davis opened fire, each shot finding its mark with practiced precision. But for every harvester that fell, 3 more appeared. 60 seconds to detonation, he said into his comm, though he wasn't sure anyone could still hear him. As the Scourge broke through the final door, Davis emptied his weapon into the first wave. When ammunition ran out, he fought with his combat knife, then with his bare hands, anything to keep them from reaching the quantum controls. 30 seconds, he gasped, blood streaming from multiple wounds. A harvester's mechanical appendage pierced his chest, lifting him from the ground. Davis felt his life ebbing away, but his eyes remained fixed on the countdown display. 10, 9, he whispered. The quantum displacement field reached critical mass, expanding outward in a sphere of pure white energy. Where it passed, matter simply ceased to exist in normal spacetime, translated to another dimensional plane. The wave engulfed the facility, the ruined city, and continued outward, consuming everything in its path: Scourge harvesters, drones, the entire planet. In orbit, the few surviving human vessels that had managed to reach minimum safe distance watched in awe as Altari Prime seemed to fold in upon itself, taking the entire Scourge armada with it. Commander Davis, Ambassador Lyran, and the brave crew of the Redemption had succeeded. The price had been almost beyond measure, but the Scourge threat had been eliminated. At least, that's what they believed. 3 months after what became known as the Battle of Altari Prime, a solemn ceremony took place in the Grand Assembly Hall. On Earth, representatives from 17 alien species stood alongside human officials as Admiral Petra Volkov addressed the gathering. "Today, we honor the sacrifice of the 7th Fleet," she began, her weathered face betraying no emotion despite the personal cost she had borne. 24 ships, 15,742 lives. We remember them not only as warriors who fell in battle, but as the embodiment of humanity's pledge to defend life throughout this galaxy, regardless of species, regardless of borders. In the front row sat Lieutenant Mira Ellis, one of the few survivors from the Redemption. She had been ordered to an escape pod by Commander Reed in the final moments before the flagship rammed the Scourge Queen's ship. Now she listened as Volkov recounted the official narrative, a heroic last stand against an implacable enemy, culminating in a victory that had saved countless lives. The true story was more complex. Following the battle, the Security Council had been faced with a dilemma. Commander Reed had directly violated orders, potentially triggering an interstellar incident. But his actions had also eliminated a threat that had terrified the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. In the end, pragmatism prevailed. The 7th Fleet's unauthorized mission was retroactively sanctioned, its fallen members declared heroes rather than mutineers. As the ceremony continued, Ellis's mind drifted to the classified briefing she had attended the previous day. Dr. Moore had presented her analysis of the Scourge technology recovered from debris that had escaped the quantum displacement field. They were created, the scientist had revealed to the stunned gathering of military leaders. The Scourge was not a natural evolutionary development. They bear unmistakable markers of engineered biology, designed to consume and adapt. Engineered. By whom? Someone had asked. Dr. Moore's expression had been grim. We don't know. But whoever designed them possesses technology far beyond our current understanding. The implications hung heavy in the room. The Scourge hadn't been an independent threat. They were someone's weapon, unleashed for unknown purposes. Now, as Ellis watched Ambassador Lyran accept a memorial plaque honoring the fallen Altari, she wondered what other secrets remained hidden. The surviving Altari, barely 500,000 rescued by evacuation ships that had reached the planet during the battle, had been granted sanctuary on Earth and its colonies. Their knowledge of quantum mechanics was already revolutionizing human technology. But at what cost? And to what end? The ceremony concluded with the unveiling of a monument, a towering spire of marble and steel that bore the names of every fallen crew member. At its base, a simple inscription read, "They stood when others would not." As the crowds dispersed, Ellis noticed Admiral Volkov approaching her. "Lieutenant," Volkov acknowledged. "Walk with me." They moved away from the crowd, finding a quiet alcove overlooking the memorial gardens. "You've been reassigned," Volkov said without preamble. "Effective immediately." Ellis blinked in surprise. "May I ask where, Admiral?" Project Sentinel. We're commissioning a new fleet. Bigger ships, better weapons, longer range. Volkov's eyes were hard. Commander Reed bought us time with his sacrifice, but we both know the Scourge was just the beginning. You believe whoever created them will send something else? I'm certain of it. The question is when, not if. Volkov handed her a data chip. You're being promoted to commander. You'll oversee tactical development for the new fleet. Ellis stared at the chip, then back at Volkov. Why me? Because you were there. You saw what we're up against. And because Reed trusted you. Before Ellis could respond, her attention was drawn to a commotion near the main entrance. A group of protesters had gathered, their signs visible even at this distance. No more war. Diplomacy, not destruction. Humanity is better than this. Volkov followed her gaze and sighed. They don't understand. They think we're becoming warmongers. Aren't we? Ellis asked quietly. No, Volkov replied firmly. We're becoming survivors. There's a difference. Later that evening, as Ellis packed her belongings for transfer to the Sentinel facility, she found a small package on her bed. Inside was a tarnished commander's insignia and a handwritten note. This was Torrens. He wanted you to have it if he didn't make it back. He said you understood what we're really fighting for. Not conquest, not power, but the right of all sentient beings to chart their own course among the stars. Remember that when the burden becomes heavy. Petra. Ellis clutched the insignia, feeling its weight, both physical and symbolic. The Battle of Altari Prime had changed everything. Humanity had revealed itself as a force to be reckoned with, willing to sacrifice its own to defend others. The galaxy's perception had shifted from viewing humans as upstart newcomers to recognizing them as the defenders they had become. But Ellis knew that the true test still lay ahead. Somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, whoever had created the Scourge was watching, planning, preparing their next move, and when they came, whether in a year or a century, humanity would be waiting, not because humans were inherently warlike or aggressive, but because they had learned through their own bloody history that freedom required eternal vigilance. The Seventh Fleet had taught the galaxy an important lesson about humanity. They might be newcomers to the cosmic stage, but they carried with them principles worth dying for. And when pushed, a determination that made them the most dangerous species in the known universe. As Ellis pinned Commander Reed's insignia to her uniform, she made a silent promise to those who had fallen at Altari Prime. Their sacrifice would not be in vain. Humanity would stand ready, not just for themselves, but for all who could not defend themselves. After all, that was what made humans special. The End's surface, Davis acknowledged the message as his Marines fought a desperate holding action against an ever-growing horde of Scourge harvesters. 3 of his 12-person team were already dead, and 4 more wounded. They had been forced to fall back to the inner laboratory, using the reinforced doorways as choke points. 5 minutes to full activation, Dr. Moore called out, her face streaked with sweat and grime as she worked alongside Ambassador Lyran at the quantum controls. We may not have 5 minutes, Torres replied grimly, firing a sustained burst that dropped 2 more harvesters. Ammunition critical on all teams. Davis made a rapid assessment. Their position was untenable, but abandoning the facility meant failure of the mission. There was only one logical course of action. Dr. Moore, he called out. Once this weapon is activated, how long until detonation? The cascade reaction takes approximately 90 seconds to build to critical levels, she replied without looking up. And it requires someone to remain here to initiate the final sequence? This time she did look up, understanding dawning in her eyes. Yes, the failsafes require manual override. Davis nodded. Then get everyone else ready to evacuate. I'll remain behind. Commander, Torres began to protest. That's an order, Sergeant. Davis cut her off. Get the wounded to the dropship. Take Dr. Moore and the ambassador. I'll buy you the time you need. In orbit, the Redemption led a wedge formation of human warships directly into the heart of the Scourge defenses. Ship after ship exploded as they absorbed devastating hits. but their sacrifice created a breach in the enemy's formation, a narrow corridor that led straight to the Queen's ship. "Breach achieved," Lieutenant Reeves reported. "We have a direct line to target. Distance closing." Torin watched as the massive Scourge vessel grew larger on the view screen. Their suicidal charge had caught the enemy off guard, disrupting the perfect coordination that made the Scourge so formidable. "All remaining power to forward Prometheus cannon," Torin ordered. "We'll only get one shot." The Redemption shuddered as multiple impacts tore through its weakened shields. Hull breaches flashed across every deck, emergency bulkheads slamming. "Shut to preserve what atmosphere remained. Weapons locked," Reeves confirmed. "Prometheus at 93% charge." "Fire when ready," Torin commanded, his voice steady despite the destruction erupting around him. The Prometheus cannon discharged one final time, the gravitational distortion striking the Scourge Queen's ship at its most vulnerable point. The effect was catastrophic. The massive vessel imploded as fundamental forces tore it apart from within, sending a shockwave of debris in all directions. With their final queen destroyed, the remaining Scourge vessels fell into disarray. Some drifted aimlessly, while others continued to attack without coordination or purpose. "Status of the ground team?" Torin asked, even as emergency alarms blared across the dying flagship. "Dropship launching from the surface," Ellis reported. 4 Marines plus Dr. Moore and Ambassador Lyron aboard. Commander Davis remained behind.